Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Monday Night Must See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. Split squad night once again for the summertime. We've got in the house Nick Franco, Chris Allo, Steve Keeler, Ryan Scow, Rich Catino, and you know who I am. So tonight's topic of conversation is we decided to go a little bit extreme tonight. So with this split squad here, we're going to talk about some of our favorite album releases from bands who kind of helped start the whole extreme metal movement, moving from thrash metal and speed metal into what we later know to be called death metal and black metal. For crying out loud, I can't even speak tonight. So those bands that kind of like help bridge the gap, that they're kind of extreme, kind of thrashy, but again, they have all those elements that we would start to see in, full-on death metal and black metal later on into the decade and go into the 90s. So I've asked everybody to pick out their 5 favorites. Again, could be as underground and obscure as you want it, or it could be, these picks could be some of the more well-known ones that you just happen to like the most. So we're going to start, we're going to go, let's see, we're going to start at the bottom here. So we're going to go Nick, Chris, Steve, Ryan, Rich, and myself. So Mr. Franco, get us all started here.
So yeah, my 5, this is just any order. But I was trying to think, there's a lot to choose from. I'm going to go with To Megatherion by Celtic Frost. Coming out in 1985, I think it really took things in another direction. It's such a classic album that it's hard to even quantify how important it was for the movement. And I think at the time it came out, it must have been nuts, because it had all the elements of that would pop up in black metal in the future, but it was presented in a very classic sounding kind of way, but yet it just was so filthy and unique that I think I have to mention To Megatherion. And then I'm wearing the shirt, Sepultura's Schizophrenia. I think it was a much more coherent release than the very chaotic one before it, and I think it helped really kind of bridge the gap between it gave you, I can't imagine listening to that, being like young and wanting to start your own band and listening to something like that, because it was thrash, but it was very, very grimy and filthy still, and it had that real death metal thing going on. I could see black metal people getting influenced by them as well. And then I went with what do you call it? I wasn't sure here, but like Sodom, I think I went with Persecution Mania, but that maybe actually in hindsight it might not have been what you were looking for, because that was very thrash, but I think it's still there's something chaotic. Earlier Sodom was more chaotic, but I think you started to see more the songwriting improve. So I think Persecution Mania, which came out in 1987, is something that you could probably look at as bridging the gap, like you said. It was a little heavier than it was probably. It's hard because Hell Awaits was probably the most insane thing I think a lot of people heard at that time, and this isn't quite as gripping as that, but I still think it influenced a lot of what came after, and at the same time in America you had, and I think my 4th one I'm going to choose is Scream Bloody Gore by Death. And I think that album, I love it. That's one of the first really extreme albums that I got into. I got that obviously a little later, but in high school. And I think Scream Bloody Gore really, Chuck's vocals are just so, oh my God, they're so good on that. And it's filthy, it's fast, and it probably
one of the first death metal albums.
Yeah, and it's just
I think it's the best. Possessed might argue with that about that, but
yeah, but that deserves Scream Bloody Gore deserves to be mentioned. And then I saved my favorite for last is The Return by Bathory. Just the song Rite of Darkness alone, just to me, that feeling I get when that comes on. I don't even think the timing of the drums was great on that album, but that was part of it. It just was so that I mean, you don't have black metal without that album, arguably. And yeah, let me see here. When did it come out? 1985. Yeah, 1985. I mean, Born for Burning, The Rite of Darkness, like I said, Total Destruction, the way it starts. Corthon really had his finger on just the magic button. So I'm going to say that The Return by Bathory is, for me, the most important early like 80s extreme album. So that would be my 5 right there, I would say.
Nick, I got a question for you, Nick.
Sure.
Why did you pick, and I'm not, taste is taste. I'm just curious for my own sake. Why did you pick that Bathory album as opposed to the next one, Under the Sign of the Black Mark? That would have been my choice. Obviously, everybody likes their own thing, but just I'm curious why you picked that one.
I think so. The truth is that I may have gotten the assignment a little bit wrong from the teacher, and I thought we were stressing earlier. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I mean, I probably have more of a relationship with Under the Sign of the Black Mark. I know the songs a little bit more because they're more articulated, right? The songwriting was a little better. But and I heard Call from the Grave when like the guy from Moonspell performed it, and like really, really early on. Yeah,
that song was so fucking
Damn it, Arc shit. Yeah. So, but to me, like right now, I'll be honest, I listen to The Return more.
Oh, I love both of them. I love the hell out of them. I'm just curious.
I prefer The Return a little bit more. I think it's got that evil, mean, lo-fi quality, but it just, oh man, you put that on, I'm flipping some tables somewhere.
Understandable.
Yeah. So that's it.
Well, good choices. I think they're all good. I mean, they're all totally relevant to what we're talking about here. So, yeah, I mean, you can go. I think I was myself. Well, I don't want to get too far ahead here, but I was looking at probably like pre-86, right?
Okay.
That's kind of where I was myself. I mean, you can go a little further, obviously, than that, but that's kind of where I was sitting in with my picks. But if it's this stuff that came after that, that is very applicable as well. So, so in saying that, Mr. Allen, what do you?
I might have done bad homework tonight too, because I was kind of thinking it was more like bands that could be bridged to go into thrash metal, not just thrash and stuff going into black and death. So I'm going to give you stuff.
We're going to get some. We're going to get some cool.
Yeah, I might get an F on my report card, but
no, that's all right.
I was going to say, I don't know what happened too. I thought we were just discussing early 80s thrash bands or whatever, extreme albums. Like I didn't know we were looking for something specifically that
all work out.
Influenced Black and Death. So I just changed my picks. So the stuff I had written down, well, fuck it, we're just going to wing it. Because, yeah, I think I got the assignment wrong too. But having said that, all right, 5 albums that were an influence on black and death metal bands later on.
I know you're going to pick. So I know it's up here.
Well, here's the funny thing.
I left them up there.
I purposely was not picking these albums. Well, maybe just one of them. But I was like, okay, I'm if we're just picking thrash stuff, I picked stuff like Hades.
I'd rather hear your original picks.
I started grabbing like different stuff because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to pick the usuals, but fuck it.
What were your thrash stuff? Now you're teasing.
Yeah, I want to hear your original picks.
Well, my original pick, I did Hades, Resisting Success, Cro-Mags, Age of Quarrel, Toxic, World Circus.
Okay.
Creator, Terrible Certainty.
That's a great album.
Yeah.
Those definitely influenced the technicality of what became a lot of black and death metal,
And I love this record. Nobody ever talks about it anymore, but man, growing up in New York in the 80s, man, it was fucking legendary. SOD, Speak English or Die. Here's the regular version and here's the platinum version, and I have a bunch of other versions as well.
Of course you do.
But then I did
about that album yesterday.
While Nick was talking, I picked 5 others that were, but I can skip those if you want.
Oh no, I want to hear them. Good.
All right. Well, so quickly, the ones that I thought were an influence on black metal and death metal bands. The first Slayer, Show No Mercy. I literally, my wife and I, well, really more her. She almost got killed while I was getting this autograph from Kerry King on the Ozfest, and I'm glad she didn't. But hey, either way, I got the autograph. But yeah, I love the first Slayer record. I mean, the first two certainly a huge influence on so many, and yeah, Rain and Blood too. I mean, so many bands. I mean, there probably wouldn't be black and death metal without Slayer. I mean, probably the most popular of any extreme metal band. And God, it's a shitty world we live in, but it would be even that much shittier without Slayer. And the only other band that growing up, and being into this stuff that at least on the West Coast, really of all the heavy thrash stuff in the States, like the only band to me that ever seemed as legendary as Slayer, I shouldn't even say legendary, but just as impactful, but then completely, while Slayer rose up, these guys just fell off the map. But man, what an unbelievable record. Darkness Descends.
Oh, I knew it.
Dark Angel.
Yeah.
Holy
Eric
shit.
Myers, yeah.
I remember in 86, I think, getting off a kid in school, and I thought it was so cool because the cassette had it was like a cream color on the plastic. It just looked different. And man, the first time I heard, Death is Certain, Life is Not, I was like, this is fucking crazy. And just so brutal. I mean, considered nobody at the time, I called it thrash metal, but now, now people call it the first wave of black metal. But of course, Melissa from Merciful Fate, this is one of the numerous versions I have. I thought I could get away with not buying the new version, but my buddy Dez, he's like, oh, dude, you got to get it. It's remastered perfectly from the original tapes. And then he's like, in this version, he's like, one of the solos on Satan's Fall is fucked up. He's like, but they fixed it on the new version. I'm like, oh great. Now I got to buy it again. But this is one of the greatest records of all time. I mean, I love Don't Break the Oath, but Melissa certainly is, in my opinion, a little bit better. I like the recording a little bit better, the production on it, and I just love the songs. Of course, we're talking death metal. I mean, the first death metal record that I ever had that is truly death metal. And I mean, when I did an hour interview with Jeff from Possessed, and he told me all about how Chuck from Death was super influenced by this record. And I guess if it comes to the debate of who really was the first death metal band, Death or Possessed, it's totally Possessed.
85. They'd be Death by a couple of years. Yeah. No question.
If you're interested in that subject on the Rock Fantasy Files, if you dig into our back episode, John McAtee actually interviewed Jeff earlier this year, and I think it was longer than an hour. I don't know how long that.
I mean, I'll have to check that out.
We always joke that you don't want to bring that subject up with him a little bit.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, he was definitely cool when I brought up that whole thing, but you'll have to watch that, Steve, because I mean, John's the perfect guy to interview Jeff.
Yeah, John's great.
But you guys remember when that album came out? I mean, nobody knew what death metal was, and all of a sudden, it's like, oh, there's no thrash.
There wasn't death metal out yet. Yeah,
Pete, that's the fucking perfect thing. Like, for me, Possessed and Death, it wasn't death metal in the 80s. It was just metal. There was no such
metal,
thing.
just heavier and a rougher, more extreme voice.
Yeah. I mean,
so now, since Chris gave us those
wait, I got one more. My last one.
Have a good night, everyone.
I was gonna say listen, my last one. Just because they were the first band I ever saw bathed in blood. I know that's a big thing on black metal with Tane and tons of other fucking bands do it. Samhain is the first Samhain record, Initium, and they're bathed in blood. And I know, Morgan from Marduk and tons of other bands are influenced by Danzig and Sam Hain and the Mystics.
That's a great point to put there, Chris. Of course, yeah. How many black metal guys like
Ah.
worship Danzig and
God, I
Mystics?
mean, what's his name? From Amorphis is a huge Danzig fan. I mean, tons of.
Tommy
Robin,
Darkest
Robin
shit you
Mason
ever
was
did,
telling
too.
a story when she was touring with Immortal, how Abbott and the guys would play We Are 138.
138, yeah.
They just now not gonna listen to the whole album. They just play that song over and over all night long while they're wasted.
Wow. That's
Robin
funny.
has some wonderful stories about
That's
reasons
hysterical.
like
But yeah,
that.
Pete, definitely. It was not segmented back then. It was just metal. You know, it was
yeah,
like there was traditional metal and there was like thrash, and that was it. I'll never forget. I saw Possessed in '87. Nobody knew it was their last tour, but I saw Possessed at Lemoore opening for Megadeth, and that Possessed had a shirt. It said, the back of the shirt, it said Possessed, the new kings of death metal. And I just remember thinking, like,
Wow.
well, who else is? I mean, I guess other
Buying
than
for the
Death. Yeah, I always remember that shirt, and I didn't have enough money to buy it. I only had money for
That was
one
I
shirt.
bet you that
Well,
would be
didn't
worth
they
it
have
for
a
the
song
book.
on Seven Churches?
Yeah, Seven
called Death
Churches.
Metal?
There is a song called Death Metal.
That's the last song on the album, Death Metal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you know, if you're like saying the new kings of of cheeseburger metal, and you can't name any other cheeseburger metal bands other than your own, it's like
Max
okay,
Sabbath. Max Sabbath.
right.
Cheeseburger metal.
But yeah, so those are my 5 or 10 picks, depending how we
Cool.
count. Because yeah, I guess I fucked it up.
That's all right. No, but
Well,
it's good discussion. So yeah, that's
It's a
fine.
discussion, so it's good.
right,
Here
Steve,
comes
what
the
do you
dog
got?
look in the face now.
Oh,
My
here we
dog
go. It's cleanliness
doesn't-
time.
Oh, God.
Crying at the door,
Nice.
raising a fuss.
Weird dog love.
You actually should have waited till it was Rich's turn, because that's usually.
I know. I was trying to.
Dog shows up.
Whose
so much.
whose turn is it now?
All right, it's your turn, Steve.
That dog loves that salt,
It's
man.
me?
Gotta have it.
Yep,
Oh,
Mr.
yeah.
Keeler.
All
I'm
right, so
enjoying
I
Blues.
didn't obey any of the rules, just like I didn't in high school. That's why I dropped out and got kicked out of school. So I kind of thought that Pete told me Saturday morning. I said, you know what? Well, bands that influenced that could have been thrash. So I went with that a little bit more than I went with black metal. My first band is Atlanta, Georgia's Hallows Eve. Tales of Terror is the album.
Oh, cool.
The band did their
Great
first ever meet and greet in my first ever meet and greet rather in my shop. Hallows Eve were in the shop. We had Tommy Stewart on my channel a couple months ago now. And that album is just a heavy album. I don't even know if it was considered thrash metal at that time, but I think it's an album that's well overlooked, and there's a lot of people that haven't heard it, but it just, Hallows Eve were so good back in those days. Starts out with the band plunging to Megadeth,
That's
which
a
is
great song.
just a killer tune. And then there's There Are No Rules. My favorite song, Metal Merchants, because I've been a metal merchant all my life, selling metal. So I thought that song always struck to my heart. And of course, the Hallows Eve, which is like epic, almost like the ending of an Overkill, like one of those ballads, like an Overkill type song at the end. So
I think I saw them at the Chance
Hallows Eve,
once.
and they didn't really influence black metal, so I'm getting enough on my report card. I'm going with another band that toured with them back in that days is Nasty Savage. Nasty Savage, self-titled album. Of course, has the song Gladiator, Metal Knights at the Dungeon of Pleasure. And they're from Brandon, Florida. They had frontman Nasty Ronnie, who ventured into pro wrestling. He used to perform outlandish stage shows, kind of like a Wendy O. Williams, where he would smash TV sets on his head. There was blood with Nasty Ronnie, right, Chris? So I guess we can then maybe that was part of the maybe a
100%.
Yeah. So that's my second one, and Nasty Savage. But I was kind of thinking how things that bridge into thrash metal, so I'm one step before everything else, and then the thrash. I'm going with 1985's Halloween Walls of Jericho for a speed thrash fest, and Rich has a T-shirt on. I don't know, and
Yeah.
of course, this album from the get-go is just a brutal, fast, and just one of the most perfect albums, I think. Walls of Jericho with Starlight, Victim of Fate.
But Steve, it's still Steven, it's still very melodic and catchy hooks though, still.
Catchy hooks, but it's speed metal and it's thrashy. And
Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
a few years
definitely.
ago, I was in the store working with Steve Levin, and because for some reason I hadn't listened to it in years, and we put this on. And we're like, holy shit, is this album heavy. If you hadn't listened to it in years and you,
It's great.
all three of these
Great.
albums I'm mentioning now in a row, like
Every moment
Owl's
we
Eve,
get to
I hadn't
walk.
listened to in years till we did an episode with Tommy.
Did you guys know that one of those Halloween songs was on an album called the Death Metal Sampler back
Yeah.
in the 80s?
With
There we
Hellhammer.
go.
Yeah, with Hellhammer.
Yes, it was Halloween, Hellhammer. I'm looking at it right now. Running Wild and Dark Avenger. They all had 2 tracks.
Wow. So,
I've
you
got
know,
a copy
like,
of that laying around somewhere. It's really good.
Yeah,
Metal Invaders, what a great song.
yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Gorgar, which I'm partial to because it's about
Yes.
the pinball
Best
machine. And of course, it's one of the
That's
best pinball
hysterical.
machines ever made.
I've put it there.
Gorgar will eat you. How many tears? And Judas ends the album. And those are my top 3. Chris picked one of mine because at least this one I did kind of pick. It is a black metal influence, one of the biggest. Melissa from Merciful Fate. Chris kind of went over that already. This has nothing to do with black metal, but it's another very outlandish stage show. Plasmatics Coupe d'Etat.
Great record.
Stop, Mistress of Taboo, Rock and Roll, Path of Glory. Just a heavy, heavy album. And rest in peace, Wendy L. Williams, because I mean, I wish she could have still been around to do more stuff because she had the voice, the look. She could have fronted, things. And Coupe d'Etat was like, to me, that was one of my favorite times. And getting to
It's a
see
great
that album and getting to see that live at the Chance. I saw them at the Civic Center, actually. And another person who used to smash TVs. And they hung out with Nasty Ronnie. So I'm way off about black metal influences, but I had some heavy ones. Of course, Slayer, Show No Mercy, I had from honorable mention. Venom, black metal. I mean, of course, first black metal stuff was kind of like Venom. So, and I guess that's it for me. I got an F on my report card, so.
Not at all. Not at all.
Pulled it off. At least I'm back on the show. I was on spring recess or whatever. I've been off for a little while. But glad to be back.
I only avoided Venom Slayer and Possessed because I figured you other guys would do it, so I try to keep
Yeah,
it
of
more
course.
variable. But those are like the gods.
Oh,
Sure, Ryan's got some pretty
that's
obscure.
a pretty black metal too.
I do.
For sure.
Only one of my picks so far. So I picked some pretty obscure stuff.
Okay. What do
Yeah, I purposely.
No
I didn't-
kidding. No, you wouldn't do that, would you?
No. Well, I didn't want to flog the horse to death. I didn't pick Dark Angel because I figured I would get picked. But obviously,
Yeah, that too.
if you don't
That's a
like
good one.
Darkness
I
to
forgot all
Sun,
about that one. That's a great choice.
that is a great. If you don't like that album, you don't like thrash metal. That's
Yeah.
like the people for me. I'll be like Welcome to Hell, Venom. The band that always comes up, like talking to people into that music, like the band, like the musicians, like the OGs, the original band for that, like the main influence was always Motorhead. Like that's always the band that comes up. It's kind of like, the Progenitors, and then Venom came, and then Bathory, and all the thrash bands. But all right, so only one of my albums got picked, so I'll go with it first because I'm still going to use it because I love it. I listen to it all the time. I would consider it the first death metal album, just by the composition and the music, how it sounded, the vocals, the lyrics, the imagery with the crosses and over the top fucking imagery, and that's this guy obviously from 1985, Seven Churches. Sounds amazing. The production's great. Jeff's vocals are absolutely off the fucking charts. Great, totally demonic. Exorcist, Pentagram, Burning in Hell, Evil Warriors, Satan's Curse. You're gonna see the pictures of these guys back then. Like they meant fucking business. Spikes, chains, upside down crosses. I love that picture right there. Old Jeff right there. Freaking great. So that's great. Now Nick mentioned Sepultura, and that's a great one because old Sepultura, huge influence on black metal, huge influence on death metal. All that South American shit is one of the biggest cauldrons of it. And they were probably the biggest band for that style, representative of South America. But there was a guy that was in the band very early on. He didn't actually record anything with them. He left really early before they even did their first EP. He formed another band, which might be, I don't know, this is like Possessed with, first death metal album. This might be the first pure modern black metal album, like no old speed metal, none of that stuff, just pure black metal, 1987. Also from Brazil, and that's Sarcophago, INRI.
Oh, yeah,
You could tell these guys were way over the top of the imagery. They have Satanic Lust, Desecration of Virgin, Christ's Death, Ready to Fuck, Ready to Fucky, because English was a little, wasn't their first one. Yeah, it was ready. It actually says right there too. Ready to fucky. Yeah,
I
this
think I like
album,
that better.
it's blast beats. It's just insane vocals, insane black metal riffs. This and a lot of bands have said that too. They're like, yeah, this is the album. We heard that, like, holy shit, we need to sound like that. And it influenced a lot, Mayhem, Immortal, Emperor, a lot of the Norwegian bands, big time influence on this album. So and it's just a great album too. And I noticed both of these bands, Possessed and Sarcophago, the first album was like that totally insane, blast from hell. And after that, they were still good, but they got a little more thrash metal. Like the second Possessed album, Beyond the Gates, great album. It's like just a little more typical thrash.
Yep.
And these guys too, after being, more like a regular thrash band, like violent thrash and good, but they weren't like that feral, like Jesus fuck, like what is this? So I'm going with these guys. My third choice is this is just a personal pick. I don't know how influential this was, but it did influence one band in particular. But this is from Hungary, 1989. This is Attila from Mayhem. But before he was in Mayhem, he was in Tormented. And
That's such a great album.
it is. And this is another one of those. I mean, it came out, they recorded it, but because at the time communism, the Iron Curtain and all that, it didn't really get any distribution. So I think it was recorded in '88. The singer Attila sent the copy to Euronymous from Mayhem, who loved it, and then all that shit went on with Mayhem. So when they needed a vocalist, he called up Attila and had him do vocals on their De Mysterious album based on
Do I near say that is one of the heaviest albums of the '80s? When you listen to that, you what year did that come out in? Like immediately when Scout turned me onto that years ago, like that came out in '88. That's
it came out in '89, but I mean, this is one of those things where
so heavy.
Sitting in Middletown, would you be able to buy a copy of this in '89? I don't think so. Like,
No.
it wasn't widely available for years, just because of the record labels and being from Hungary and the Iron Curtain and all that shit. But I mean, this is another one of those albums too. Like this doesn't sound like old speed and old thrash. Like this sounds like pure black metal, in an '80s band, which was kind of rare at the time. There's examples, but yeah, these guys are just, this album is fucking great.
And Ryan, when they performed at MDF recently, that was one of the best experiences, one of the best sets, just madness, and just so good.
In 2018, I went over to Bergen, Norway, to Beyond the Gates Festival, named after the Possessed album. It was a great fest. Going to Norway was obviously amazing, but like the reason I went, the main reason was to see them play this album, and it was. I don't want to say like I've been to a lot of concerts. I don't want to say it was the best concert I've ever seen, but I could easily say it was the top 5. Like I was just sitting there like spellbound. Like I didn't even know what to do. Like people were smashing their fists. Like this is the greatest shit out. Like I didn't even know what to do. Attila had on this cape and spikes, and there was blood. Oh god, it was fucking amazing. So
it's one of the most intense frontmen in the business.
He is.
If he is not. Yeah.
And this, they after he joined Mayhem, they didn't really. I mean, they did 2 demos. This was recorded as a demo and released later. They didn't do anything really for decades. Like they put out one weird album in 2000, which is kind of electronic, a little weird. But like the original Tormentor didn't do anything until like 2017, 2018. They came back, started playing shows, and it was like they never left. And they're the greatest thing I've ever seen. So that's some Hungarian magic. I don't know how they did it.
Something in the water.
Something in the middle of that Countess Bathory blood. But yeah. So going back to the States for my next pick, I don't know how influential this was. Well, this is actually, I shouldn't say that. In the end of the '80s, you start getting like thrash bands that is like, the Morbid Angels and like those kind of bands, like Deicide started popping up. You started getting bands that were like still thrash metal, but they're just a little too intense to be considered like, I don't know, like is it thrash metal, is it death metal? Who cares? It's good. And one of my favorites from that is the first album by Sadus, Chemical Exposure. This has Steve DiGiorgio on bass. This came out, and I had to write down. This came out in 1988. This is just a violent thrash album. It never slows down. It's just like full speed ahead, a million beats a minute the whole time. Vocals are great. Drumming's insane. So I don't know. For that style, that kind of like, is it thrash? Is it death? Who cares? This might be my favorite of that sound. This is really good. And my last one I'm going with is a band that only ever released one album. I think it's one of the best albums of the whole '80s. This was recorded in recorded in '86, but not released until '89. So they had some problems. They recorded it, had a whole bunch of problems. They broke up. Album never came out. Eventually, I think some of the guys from Carcass stepped in and helped them get it out. And they're from bumfuck Michigan, and the band is Repulsion. And
Wow.
you know what? I could say this might be of all the albums being discussed as far as like heaviness and nastiness and like violent sound. This could be the most craziest album of the 80s. I'd put that out there. I really would say, because it's just, you know, because some people call it grindcore, death metal, thrash. I don't know. It's like a little mix of everything, but it's just nonstop. Doesn't stop for a single song. There's no ballads. There's no slow parts. There's no acoustics. Guitar solos, maybe. You know, they're kind of buried in there. But yeah, fucking great. So this is a classic album. One of the first bands to like kind of write about gore. You know, before Cannibal Corpse, before Carcass, before any of those guys. These guys were doing it, and yeah, this is just a great album. And the guitar tone and the bass guitar, it's like that Voivod Motorhead level of, you know, it's like drilling holes in your head. It's heavy. So I'm going Repulsion Horrified. I do got some honorable mentions, but I figure we'll go around, you know, pick those last, so I'll save those.
Cool. Good choices.
Chris Allo, way off subject, but is that a WCW Fall Brawl hat on?
It is.
And which Fall Brawl was that?
It's actually a brand new hat my buddy gave me.
Ah.
So yeah, it's like I guess a repro hat.
Chris, you look really young today.
I do.
Yeah, you look like you're like 25.
Youthful.
Jesus, I
I
wish.
tell you what, maybe he's transported back to the 90s, and we're gonna go to the WCW Fall Brawl this weekend.
Woo!
Chris
That'd
is
be
counting
great.
Even
Lazarus.
though it's in the middle of summer, even though we're in summer.
Yeah, I'll
What was
take that. Thanks, Nick. That's very kind of you. Normally, it's Rich who gets the
You're at
mentions
the
for his
wrong-
hair.
you're-
Rich
that
rather.
hat's not in- that hat's
Rich
definitely
gets the
not in
mentions for the
season.
hair and his beautiful skin. So I'll take the young looking. Thank
what
you.
was the WCW pay-per-view that was for 4th of July?
Well,
I think that's the hat you should have had on.
Yeah, 4th of July was like Great American Bash, but Fall Brawl was
Yeah,
usually
the
like
Great American
War
Bash,
Games.
That's what we're.
The War Games double cage match.
You're way out of season with that
I'm
Fall
sorry.
Brawl hat. Man. So
He's got to wear the new hat. I mean, what, last week or the week before you were sporting that new Sea of Tranquility hat. So
Oh, I got that right over there.
Yeah.
I wear many hats.
was that the pay-per-view that Abdul the Butcher got electrocuted?
Yeah, that was a good. Yeah, that was. I think that was Fall Brawl on '91 with Cactus in there
Yeah, that
and
was
Sting.
great.
And Cactus throw the switch that fried to Abbey, if I
Oh, it was
remember right.
crazy.
Now we're totally off subject. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
it's all
I
my
was
fault. See
thinking
what
metal,
happens when
you
you
know.
invite me back?
You
You're
mentioned
gonna tell me
that
to take the rest of summer off now. Oh, here comes a different dog to wash his face.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's Rich turns, I wanted to get the other dog.
There you go.
Scott, do you like white peanut butter on your face before the show?
Steve, I have naturally salty, delicious skin. The dog-
see that, Rich? Everybody else is getting all the attention tonight. What do you got for us here?
Rich, you don't have any.
All right, so I
animals
think
that'll wash your face?
I picked some albums that nobody picked, so these will be good.
He's
Nice.
doing he's
So-
readjusting.
I mentioned that death metal sampler, so I figured I'd grab the first Running Wild album, because even though they're the pirate metal band that they became for Port Royal and Under Jolly Roger, but before that there was Gates to Purgatory, which is, it's not, you know, death metal or thrash metal, but it's got a lot of those elements. It's pretty heavy. The vocals are not quite polished like it became later. You know, it's pretty fast. It's speedy. It's got let's see, I can't even read the font because of course the font's in light blue. All right, here we go. So Black Demon, Soldiers of Hell, Diabolic Force, Prisoners of Our Times. So a few of the titles, you know, it's kind of black metal-ish. So I think these guys were kind of influential in the beginning, you know, when they started off. But obviously they became something totally different. Like I was saying, that death metal sampler, they have 2 tracks on that. When you listen to those, it's Iron Heads and Bones to Ashes. You can hear how they started out kind of with that early rough production, maybe death metal before death metal was death metal. You know, so that's why maybe they put that on that sampler. Like the Halloween, you know, like the Walls of Jericho. So yeah, I picked that one for something different. I think it's got its place. It's important. Then one of the first ones that I got, like at the import bin, and I saw the album cover, I was like, oh, this is cool. Then I listened to it and I was like, wow, this is pretty rough. I mean, it sounds pretty awful. And the song structures are really not there, but it's a classic still. So I went with Sodom Obsessed by Cruelty.
That's great. That's a great one.
I almost
Great,
picked
great
that.
cover. You know, the music is obviously they didn't get it at this point. They were just banging it out. You know, there's really like these songs, there's not even really songs. It's just like a whole, you know, mishmash of chaos trying to structure a song. But it's such early, you know, black and death metal.
Rich, I heard a joke years ago. Parts of that song where Tom Angel was like, ugh, that was the signal for the other guys to change riff or change speed. All right, guys, we're start playing riff number 2.
That's funny.
But yeah, this album, even the back, you know, you see them in their outfits too, the leather and the spikes and everything.
And Tom's
Just like Possessed.
haircut on
You
that.
know, like early.
He had that ridiculous bowl haircut.
Oh, the bowl cut for sure.
Yeah, the bowl cut.
Yeah. The really short bowl cut. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I wonder what he thinks about that now.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely an important album, but just not a very good album. But it's cool for what it is. I'll go with of course, Creator, Pleasure to Kill. Kind of like the next level past Slayer, Show No Mercy, and Hell Awaits, I think.
How did nobody else pick that? I mean, that's perfect. That's like
Yeah.
I thought of it.
Yeah.
I thought of it.
I could have gone with the first
I
one.
prefer Terrible Certainty. That's why I picked that one before I knew it was the influence thing.
That's even better, I think. I could have
Yeah,
gone with the first
that's
one.
my
But the
favorite
first one,
Creator.
what's the first one? Endless Pain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Endless Pain is really rough too, but this is a little more refined. But you got like classics on here like Pleasure to Kill, Riot of Violence. What else is on here? Command of the Blade, Under the Guillotine. So there's several classics that they still play to this day that's on this album. So yeah, definitely an important one for
My flag I hate shirt.
early black and death metal.
That's my favorite one. I love that album. Oh my god.
I'm an Endless Pain guy.
I had to go with another German band. Got to go with Destruction, Infernal Overkill.
Good choice. Nice choice.
Schmear's voice was actually very unique, I thought, compared to the other two bands. A little more of a snarl in his voice compared to the other two. And I thought their structures were much more organized compared to the other two bands, especially on this album. So this got Death Trap, Tormentor, Bestial Invasion, Thrash Attack, Antichrist, Black Death. So they were kind of teetering between the black metal, death metal, but being a band, right? They're kind of a little bit of both, like a hybrid almost. But clearly,
Destruction definitely were the satanic thrash from Germany at that
Yeah.
time, for sure.
yeah. But then they, you know, they grew and then they expanded their topics and their lyrics and everything as they went along. But this is still, it's an influential, I think, black and death metal album, but it's still very thrashy, right? Don't you guys agree?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
100%.
Yeah, it's very much a thrash album. And then my last choice, I'm going to go with a Canadian band that nobody has mentioned yet. How about Sacrifice, Torment, and Fire
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Good one. Yeah.
So that
That's a
and
real
Stone
good one.
Temple Fortune.
from 1985? So this was, you know, at the beginnings of this whole merging and birth of black and death metal. So this album is like that, kind of like The Creator, kind of like Slayer, Show No Mercy, where it's really kind of rough around the edges, and the voice is really harsh, you know, or actually not like the Slayer, more like the Dark Angel album, the first one, right? Where the arrangements are really hard and fast and heavy and brutal, but the voice is much more, you know, it's a rougher voice. But this is a cool album. I always like this one. This has Turn in Your Grave, Sacrifice, Warrior of Death, The Exorcism, Possession, Decapitation. You know, your typical death and black metal titles for that time, right? But it's a cool album. I like this one. It's got
I
a
saw them a
pretty good
couple years
production.
ago in Montreal, and they
Yeah.
still kicked ass. They were really good.
Are they still like back or on and off back, or what's their
Put out a
status?
reunion album a couple years ago, and that was good. But I saw them in, I want to say 2017 in Montreal.
Yeah.
I'll admit I was really drunk, but that's the perfect kind of music to listen to really drunk, because you don't. It's not like listening to Rush or King Crimson where you really want to focus.
I was going
you
to say
know,
Dream Theater.
Yeah, you just
This is,
drinking, smashing beers and pushing people around, having a good old time.
This is the reissue edition with some extra stuff and live tracks and everything. It's cool.
Nice.
Master. Yeah, so that's my 5.
Cool.
Good choices.
So the tradition of going last in a show like this is, all your picks generally get picked. So I usually try to come with extra picks. So I came with more than 10. And out of all of them, I only got 2 left that you guys didn't mention. So everything else
Oh.
today. So the first one I'm going to throw out there from 1984 is Hellhammer's Apocalyptic Raids. The little kind of EP demo, whatever the hell you want to call it. I just think Hellhammer, there you go. I think Hellhammer in general just needs to be mentioned here.
That's funny, Pete. That was my one honorable mention because I have it next to me. I was like, oh yeah, there's the 3 versions I got of this one.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, right? I mean, because it's like their
totally.
music, like at the time, I mean, I remember the first time I heard a Celtic Frost album, I was like, wow, this is some different shit, right? But then I didn't hear Hellhammer till after I heard Celtic Frost.
Same.
And then I was like, wow, that's even more out there than Celtic Frost is. And just fast, and those vocals and the just really rudimentary primal raw guitar work, and just totally different. And if I was going to pick a Celtic Frost album, I would have went with To Megatherion as well, like Nick did. I love the album. I think that's such an important album to the extreme metal scene in a big way. The other one that wasn't mentioned, then I'll throw out all the ones that were already mentioned. Necrophagia, Seasons of the Dead, 1987.
Oh, that's a good one.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That came out like right after the Possessed album, I think, or shortly thereafter. I think that came out before Scream Bloody Gore. I remember the first time. In fact, I bought it from Steve Keeler himself at Rock Fantasy. I remember I loved, because of course I always love horror movies and zombies.
Oh, that art mount works amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I remember listening to it and I was like, whoa, this is totally something different. And it was, but I don't think the band ever really kind of topped that first album. That was basically it. So whatever. But other ones that I had on my list, I had Destruction, Infernal Overkill, Pleasure to Kill by Creator, Death, Scream, Bloody Gore, Possessed, Seven Churches, Hell Awaits by Slayer. I decided to go with Hell Awaits because I think for me, the first album, which is my favorite Slayer album of all time, although I see them going in certain directions, I think for me, Hell Awaits is where they really had the kind of, oh shit, this is some scary stuff factor for the first time. I think they really kind of took that turn on Hell Awaits. And got to have Black Metal by Venom on here, I think.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the obvious choice, but definitely
it's a good choice though.
It is, right? Yeah, it's just, again, that's another band. First time I heard Venom, I only
left it off because I thought Ala was going to talk about it.
Well, I had 3 copies with me, but I figured someone else was going to pick it. So.
I had 3 copies.
No, I actually have, I think 8 or 9 copies, but the only 3 in front of me.
That's a lot of copies, man.
On your soul.
Well, you got a couple bonus tracks on one. You got a remix on the other, a remaster on the other. One's got a
vinyl here.
One's got a
you guys know. I don't have to tell you.
Oh, I got 3 copies of that. That's all I got. I mean, I didn't even know
the curse is real, gentlemen. I tell you.
It never ends.
And then I had Merciful Fate Melissa on here as well. But in all honesty, it's funny. I was listening to Melissa at the gym today, and I listened to Don't Break the Oath the other day. And I'm thinking that Don't Break the Oath probably had a little bit, musically speaking and lyrically speaking, had a little bit more of an influence on the extreme metal scene, I think. I'm saying that today, but I could change my mind next week. So I don't know. But both albums, obviously. But musically, though, really not at all like a lot of the other bands we're talking about. I mean, there's a majesty and a sophistication on those Merciful Fate records from a pure musical perspective that it's really not thrash. It's really not black metal or death metal. It's not speed, right? It's like classic metal with like these
and a lot of melody, a ton of melody,
some progressive elements, a lot of gothic elements. I mean, there's like Merciful Fate really was way ahead of their time. I think
they were 100% diehard Satanists too. Like there was no, I love the shit out of Venom, but they were obviously like taking the piss and having a good time.
They were having fun.
They were 100% into it. Like they were all about that stuff, and it was great.
They had the atmosphere of black metal before.
They really did. They did. No one sounded like them back then. And I can't think of another band.
When you focus this discussion through the lens of like what I heard the earliest in my life, the earliest of all of these albums that I heard in my life was Hell Awaits. And when I heard Hell Awaits by Slayer, I had no idea music could be that evil.
Yeah, same for me.
Scary
That's-
opening.
That's a
That's
great.
scary
So,
opening.
can everybody answer that? What is the first of all these albums we talked about today? What is the first one you
Yeah.
heard?
Slayer for me.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Slayer.
The most evil stuff was Merciful Fate for me. I can remember seeing them at the Capitol Theater in Passaic. At the time, I mean, everyone's numb to it now because there's so much, like, so much of this in the music and the metal scene. But when King Diamond came out with his, human bone cross, and he said, "We would like to turn the Capitol Theater into the house of Satan," it was very disturbing to many people there. I mean, I knew one guy that stopped, like really liked the music, but it was very bothersome to him because it was so satanic. There was not, other than Venom back then, there wasn't much like that out there. And like you said, that was the real life horror film, a Merciful Fate live. Seeing
most-
them.
It was taking what Alice Cooper did to the next step into horror.
Oh,
And
definitely.
horror
Because
and theater, you know?
Cooper had the horror show, but he did not have like the black,
Right,
the
like the
satanic church.
anti-religious slant he didn't
Yeah.
have. But yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
for me it was definitely Hell of all these records. The first one was Hell Awaits, but the ironic part here is that Kerry King admits that the reason Hell Awaits is the way it was because on that record they took a huge influence from Merciful Fate.
Yeah, I've heard that same thing, Chris.
Yeah.
You can hear it on that album. It's like,
Oh, totally. I mean,
No,
it's
no,
so much
Mercy-
more progressive than
Like
the
at Dawn They
first
Sleep.
record was Made in
Dawn They
Priest.
Sleep.
Yeah,
yeah.
When they sleep. Yeah.
Show No Mercy to me sounds like stained glass.
There he
with all
is.
the-
Yeah.
like
total
that.
Made in Priest.
Yeah,
not that it's
yeah,
bad,
Halloween
it's-
is like
Yeah.
Two
they're
toys that
Merciful Fate.
represent the episode. We
Here.
got the Venom toy and the King
Well, those
Diamond
guys should
toy.
totally
They all
fight.
about Rock Fantasy.
Fight. Make them fight. No, sir, we didn't see you playing with your dolls again. Well, but the
Merciful Fate
heaviest
was the
thing,
first for me. I heard Merciful Fate right before I heard Hell Awaits.
Yeah.
So it was definitely Merciful Fate for me.
the heaviest thing I had heard.
Honorable
Yeah.
mention.
Yeah, anybody got any honorable
This
mentions?
was before this was even invented.
Yeah,
No one
I
did
have
this then. It wasn't even there then.
Scum by Napalm Death.
Yes. Yeah.
That's chaos.
That's a violent album. And actually, the first two, From Enslavement to Obliteration, which I think
Yeah.
was 1988,
Yeah.
still 80s. Yeah,
88 or
that's
89,
woo, that's my favorite. I'm
Yeah.
speaking of the German bands, Destruction, Sodom, Creator. There was a cool German band, not the one with Bret Michaels, called Poison.
Oh yeah.
They were, they put out a demo. It's called Into the Abyss, and then they put out a bunch of demos, but they put out one demo in '87 called Into the Abyss, and yeah, it's pretty much black metal. It's like just nasty, raw, not super raw. Like it's, you can tell they recorded in a studio and not in like a toilet. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's a great album. It's a great demo, and it was reissued as Further Down Into the Abyss. So really obscure, but yeah, worth listening to. And I got to go down to Australia. There was a cool band from Australia, mid-'80s. They didn't actually record an album. They just put out a couple demos. I think just a demo and a rehearsal, but it was some of the heaviest shit in the world at the time. And that is fucking Slaughter Lord. And,
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, I know Steve Hughes has been on the show as a guest, but yeah, for the middle of the '80s, like this stuff was right up there with Repulsion, Death, Possessed. I think if they had finally gotten a full album out, it would have been spoken of on the same terms, but they never did. So this is a compilation that came out in the year 2000, like many, many years later. It was put out on CD. And I don't know if I should include this. To me, this was recorded in 1987 or 88, but it didn't come out till 91. So it's this kind of, I don't know. But if it came out in the 80s, this would definitely be the sickest album of the whole decade when it comes to like just over the top bonkers craziness. Also from Australia, and that's the first Sadistic Execution album. This is like 100 times crazier than anything that's been mentioned. It's just absolute bananas. And this is one of those bands where it's like a little too bananas, and a lot of people are like, I can't deal with that. But just to listen to this, thinking they wrote and recorded this shit in the mid 80s, like in 88, 87. It's like beyond, it's just nonstop chaos, stuff that you wouldn't expect from other bands until years later. But these guys were doing way back when. So yeah, awesome album. Cool art too from one of the guys in the band. So those are all my honorable mentions.
Cool. Anybody else got any?
I kind of gave mine already. I gave a little list. I didn't know we were going
Yeah.
around twice.
If I had I think I would have picked, I was thinking earlier albums, but I think for the Sepultura album that I loved the most out of that era actually came out in '89, and that's Beneath the Remains. So I could have picked Beneath the
That's a great
Remains.
album.
Yeah, great record.
That's my favorite one from them. Yeah,
That was
Yeah.
the Middletown
I think it's the
tour. I
lighter,
played
so-
the Rock Palace and Beneath the Remains.
Songs like Primitive Future, I mean, just so not
Yeah.
primitive. Really, really well done.
still
might have-
super heavy, but yeah, it's got like, you know,
Right.
Very intricate.
I was lucky enough to have Sepultura for an in-store on that tour.
Nice.
They had great catchy tempo changes and riff changes at that time.
Definitely.
Very catchy, very good.
You know, I'm not. I know I'm a little younger than most of you, and I'm not big. You know, I wish I was around to see what. You know, whatever. You're born when you're born. But I could tell you from watching live footage of like on YouTube of Sepultura, like back in the end of the '80s and the early '90s, playing like stuff from Schizophrenia, Beyond, Beneath the Remains, Arise. Man, they ate every other band on the planet alive back then. Like they played everything like it was like a freaking nuclear war. There's one video of it's like the whole concert on YouTube of them playing like in Barcelona in like early 90s. And it's just one of the greatest things ever. Like it's just absolute chaos. There's a video of them playing in Mexico, and there's like a 1,000 person circle pit, like the whole fucking venue is just rotating in a circle. People are just losing their absolute minds. So
I tell
that's
you,
one
Ryan,
band I would have loved to have seen, like when they were like young and hungry, like
Oh, yeah.
full.
when the video for
It's been a couple days here in Middletown, actually. They hung out at Mike Yusufer's house, at Primeval's house.
wow, when the video for Dead
that's
Embryonic
another band, Primeval. Holy cow! I mean, geez, that's
Yeah, some local flavor there.
yeah.
Primeval, yeah.
Yeah, they were definitely in that. They're relevant. They had that early death thrash kind of sound back in the late '80s.
Now,
Absolutely.
you want to talk theatrical? We had Ben Circus.
Yeah.
That did the shows with they had a nurse and they had all different, theatrical things here in Middletown. That's a whole nother episode,
I know,
right,
right?
Pete? The
right.
Middletown metal.
Nick, I don't know. You had something before?
Oh no, I was just going to expand on with the Sepultura conversation. When I saw the Dead Embryonic Cells video on Headbangers Ball when I was in like 10th grade, I listened to Arise every day for like the entire school year. I would, if I throw on Sega Genesis and play Sonic the Hedgehog, and you put on Arise, I'm transported right back to that year. I just sat in my room, just listening to that album on repeat. But when the video for Dead Embryonic Cells came out, I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. Like that was part of my personal metamorphosis into super, super heavy shit.
And that got a lot of airplay on MTV, shockingly, for the
Yeah, it
time.
did. Headbangers
Yeah.
Ball played it a lot.
It did. That was a great video. They were, like Ryan said, they had clips from them playing live, and oh my god.
I think that's when they were at their peak, like the late '80s, early '90s. Like they were just, oh my goodness,
yeah.
at the top of the world. Yeah.
Made it my top of the world.
That's right. That's right.
I saw Sepultura with they were with Pantera. That was at the Knickerbocker Arena.
Oh, yeah.
believe.
I saw that at Nassau Coliseum.
And that's where we did we got a meet and greet that day with Sepultura. I still have photos up in the shop, And that's when they, were really, that's probably the biggest they ever got, because they were opening in big arenas with Pantera.
Yeah, they altered their sound a little bit, and they caught on with the younger kids. But how many of the original fans did they kind of piss off down the road? Along the way.
Yeah, like I love Chaos AD, but that's it. That's where it ends.
Yeah, I mean, look, Roots. I mean, if they hadn't have broken up, Roots, I think could have been huge, because look at the influence that sound had on all these other bands that just blew up unbelievably. I think had Sepultura toured as hard on Roots as they did on their previous records, and obviously have they not fallen apart, they could have been massive. They could have been maybe not as big as Pantera, but I think under that. I mean, considering the Corns and the Limp Bizkits just fucking blew up.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of those bands. I don't know if they ripped off,
Godzilla.
but it definitely dovetails. It's-
Right. Well, they all used what's his name, Ross Robinson, the same producer, and
Roots was '96, I think.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Chaos AD was
all that new metal by a little bit, but it was definitely like right when new metal was coming out, they did that, and that was like, I mean, I consider that. I don't know. I consider that a new metal album.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I hate that record.
I don't like it at all, but it's definitely one of the
Yeah,
progenitor.
sure. And of course, we've had how many Soulfly albums since then?
Oh, like 86.
Yeah, at least 80.
I think Max put
and
2 out while we were shooting this video.
Sepultura is putting out quality stuff still, but it's different, you know. We're saying Sepultura broke up, but Sepultura didn't really break up.
They're still yeah. Hey, I'll take the Derek Green Sepultura over Soulfly any day.
Oh yeah,
me too.
Yeah,
They split the season. Now Cavalera's got another album. Go Ahead and Die, and I got flagged on social media for promoting the record because it's a bad word. Supposedly, Go Ahead and Die is related to COVID or something.
Oh, Jesus. You're being bad. You're gonna get in trouble.
It said Go Ahead and Die. You can be flagged for putting this up. It's like an album name. It's a band name.
Change it. Be like, Go Ahead and Hug. Then you're fine.
Go Ahead and Die.
Yeah, well.
But what if you put "I want fucky" on Facebook?
Better watch out. People not going to get any monetization out of this one if we keep talking like this.
As long as I don't put the cover to "Houses of the Holy" by Led Zeppelin, I'm okay.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Right. Or that was a Blind Illusion.
I could have warned you about that one 5 years ago, Pete. Because that happened to me a long time back. Because it was
one of the biggest selling albums of the '70s. I'm like, give me a break. Whatever. I'm over. So anyway, everybody, there you have it. Some selections, some favorites of kind of thrash, death, black hybrid albums of the 80s, influential albums that helped bridge the gap to extreme metal as we know it today. So I want to thank everybody for putting together their lists, and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we are on YouTube all the damn time. For Nick Franco, Chris Allo, Steve Keeler, Ryan Scow, Rich Catino, IMP Pardo, thanks for watching the Hudson Valley Squares Split Squad Summer. See you all next Monday with a different configuration. Next week is 1970. What, Steve? What do we got?
Right?
1976.
Bicentennial.
That's right. So stay tuned for our favorite albums of 1976 coming up next Monday, and we'll see you then. Tune in tomorrow for In the Prague Seat. Wednesday is What's Hot with Sea Tranquility Day. Thursday is The Monsters Den. Friday, Martin Popoff back in the house for the Fun House, and before you know it, we'll be back to the following week. So thanks for watching, everybody. See you real soon. Bye-bye.